When I was 19, I decided I would never feel anything ever again. I remember the moment very clearly. It was night time, I was in the shower, there was the glaring bathroom light and the extractor fan whirring. I was just standing there staring at that light with the water on my back, thinking, I'm not doing this ever again. In that moment, I felt more lonely than I ever had in my entire life. I'd just come out of a bad breakup and I was unsuccessfully trying to date again. I'd heard that women want stoic and powerful men, so I decided to lean into that. And I tried to live up to that ideal. I bought into the idea that feelings were weak, feelings were feminine, feelings were a burden that prevented me from living my life and being powerful and a powerful man. I tried to be something that human beings, men and women alike, are not, which is always perfect, always unfeeling, always stoic, and always knowing the right thing to do at just the right time. I'd fallen into a trap that society often teaches men, which is that being sensitive, having emotions, and having feelings makes you less of a man, and you're supposed to cut that all off and just be logical, pragmatic, and rational. Women don't get off any easier. Society allows women to have their emotions more, but it judges them very harshly if they express those emotions in a way that society doesn't really think is feminine and womanly. So a woman expressing sadness is being dramatic. A woman expressing sexual desire is being a slut. A woman expressing anger is being hysterical and crazy. And as a result, many women do express their emotions, but at the same time, they're confused because society tells them that they can only express them in this certain way, and that's rigid, and women quite rightly are not happy trying to put up with that. And if you don't fit into the traditional gender binary, then society doesn't really know what to do with you, and these problems are all exacerbated and even more challenging. So basically, everybody ends up with the message that being sensitive is bad. Being attuned to your feelings and the feelings of other people and being able to express that is bad. And this is because our society values reductionism, pragmatism, and deterministic materialism rather than intuition and sensitivity and feeling. And we just know that this isn't how life works. If it was, we would have built the perfect society by now. And we definitely haven't achieved that. So it's really up to us as individuals to look after ourselves and really get in touch with and reclaim our own sensitivity as two sensitive people and use our ability to feel more deeply, to start creating a world for us and for the people around us in which being sensitive is actually a valued trait. I'd like to propose that being sensitive is a superpower. You can't actually be too sensitive. Being sensitive means being attuned to yourself, to other people, and to the situations around you. The more sensitive you are, the more information you take in. And the more information you take in, then the more you're able to process what's going on and potentially spot things, little tiny important things that other people might not pick up on. And that is what gives you an edge. Look at the greatest creators the world has ever seen. Their sensitivity is what made them a cut above everybody else. If Leonardo da Vinci wasn't as sensitive, his eyes as sensitive to light, and his hands as sensitive to the strokes of a paintbrush, then we wouldn't have the Mona Lisa. If Mozart wasn't as sensitive to the sounds of a piano and the violin and other instruments, then we wouldn't have any of his great symphonies. Sensitivity is even in place in modern famous and successful people today. Taylor Swift is very sensitive to how a crowd reacts and how to cultivate a loving fandom. Or Kylian Mbappe is extremely sensitive to the tiny movements of a football. Sensitivity is the edge of all successful people. Your sensitivity can be your edge as well. Maybe you're great at recognizing how other people might be feeling. Maybe you're great at noticing little things and situations that other people could miss. Maybe you're really intuitive and in touch with yourself and can sometimes just feel what the right thing to do is. Sensitivity helps you in all areas of life. One way my sensitivity has helped me is it's made me less worried about dating. I know that with my sensitivity, I can meet someone who I'm attracted to, I can talk to them and kind of feel out their vibe a little bit. And if I get good feelings about them, then I can trust that and I can take small interpersonal risks that show a little bit of my vulnerability. And that will really help me meet someone who could be right. Because when I'm interacting with them, I'm going to know if they're kind of into me, and I'm going to know if I'm into them because I'm sensitive to how they might be feeling and how they look like they're feeling, and also how I'm feeling in that interaction. It's the same thing with work, really. Almost half of work is actually just managing how other people perceive you and shouting about your successes. Ask anyone who's been in an office for more than a little while, and they'll tell you that managing those relationships and making sure you make as much noise as possible about all the things you're doing right and all the wonderful, wild things happening is what's most important. You won't get promoted just because you're doing good work. You get promoted because you're doing good work, and the people who could promote you know that you're doing work. And in fact, you've used your sensitivity to be aware of what's most important to them, and then you're highlighting those parts of your work so that it's really clear and really obvious to them. There's obviously a load of individual pragmatic elements about how that works, but the fundamental principle of being sensitive to your needs and other people's needs, and then using that sensitivity to give yourself and other people what they need and what they want, is vital. And at this point, you might be thinking, Lewis, that's great. Sensitivity is really helpful, but you're missing one key thing here. If I'm more sensitive, I'm going to get hurt more and it's going to hurt a lot more. Being sensitive doesn't just mean I'm going to feel the good things, it also means I'm going to feel the bad things, and I don't want that. To that, I say that you make a really good point. When we remain sensitive, we remain open to the world, we do also expose ourselves to being hurt. And because we're so sensitive, it can feel like that hurt is hurting even more. But what if I told you that being sensitive doesn't actually make you get hurt any more than not being sensitive, and it doesn't make you feel the hurt anymore either? It actually just means that you're feeling all of the hurt rather than squashing it down and suppressing it and pretending it doesn't exist. I'll give you an example. The pain and grief you feel if your mother were to die is not going to change or be any more or less if you're sensitive and open to it. You will still feel that grief, whether you're open to it or not. But at least when you choose to feel it, you can start to process it. And that's a good thing. Not feeling it means carrying all of that unprocessed emotion around with you, and that allows it to subconsciously affect your actions and your thoughts, which is not a good thing for your life. Whereas when you feel it, oh, it hurts. You really feel it. But at least when you're feeling it, there's an end to it. Feeling is healing, and when you allow yourself to feel it, you allow yourself to process it. And if you allow yourself to process it, then the pain ultimately will come to an end. You want to be able to feel life's pain, even if it hurts, because that's the only way that you're ever actually going to find a way through it and for it to stop. Feeling is also a great teacher. Feeling pain is usually a sign that you're not quite doing something right in your life. And if you're sensitive and attuned to that, then you can feel that pain when it's at a lower level and start to make changes to stop the pain. Whereas if you're not sensitive and you're stubborn and you refuse and you push it down, then the situation might get a lot worse, which will then cause you to feel worse, and it will hit that threshold where you cannot suppress it anymore, at which point the world's probably on fire and you've got to take drastic action to change things. And that's a much worse position to be in than had you just been sensitive and open to, oh, something doesn't feel right here. Let me see what I can change. And you can make a small adjustment rather than waiting until things are threatening to become catastrophic. Life will always contain pain. You cannot build a life around avoiding pain. Your goal shouldn't be to try and be happy all the time. A much wiser way to approach life is to remain open, but cultivate the emotional mastery to receive and to process anything that life throws at you. Emotional mastery really is the key here, especially if you're a sensitive person, especially if you really do feel things. And emotional mastery is the difference as a sensitive person between being called too sensitive and actually being one of the most powerful people in your life because of how sensitive you are. The first step to emotional mastery is getting in touch with yourself, being sensitive to your needs. When we grow up in a society that tells us, stop being so sensitive, don't feel or express that, we lose touch with our most important source of information, ourselves. And we start to think that emotions are too much and too overwhelming or illogical and useless. And so we either become repressed robots trying to be pragmatic and logical at all times, or we aren't taught or shown how to emotionally regulate ourselves. So we just become these flailing, emotionally overloaded people, a little bit like little children, who can't emotionally regulate themselves because they don't know how. In either case, we fall into these traps because we've listened to societal conditioning and we've lost touch with ourselves. We've learned to look elsewhere for how we should actually be, whereas turning inward and being sensitive to ourselves is the only way that we will really know how we should be feeling and how we should be acting and processing that. People can give you advice, but nobody can actually do this for you. Nobody else is in your body and in your mind and in your heart and knows how you feel and what you need to process and express things for yourself. You need to feel inside, use your sensitivity, and start rebuilding that relationship with yourself. And once you've cultivated that relationship with yourself, then you will truly learn what a superpower it is to have such sensitivity. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit like and subscribe if you want more content like this. I wish you all the best on your healing journey, and I'll see you again soon.